Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I haven't got any. No. Thank you. Okay. There aren't any substitute members for agenda item 2. Agenda item 3, we have councillors Roger Constable, Jim Cripps. Yeah, no, I don't need you to signal. We've got Councillor Julie Gooding. We haven't got James Gooding, have we?
He's a member of the committee.
Oh, no, we haven't. No, thank you. Councillor Rowe, Councillor Steptoe, Simon Wootton, Councillor Newport, Mr Newport,
Wilkinson.
Councillor Wilkinson. Yeah, I'm just looking. Have we missed anyone else? Oh, Councillor Steptoe. Oh, Dominic, thank you. That's it. Have I missed any other councillors? No, thank you. Agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of February. Are the meetings agreed, members? Thank you. Agenda item 5, to receive declarations of interest. I have a declaration for item 9, that are non-pecuniary, that I do know the owners of the property. No, sorry, it's not. It's the council offices, item 7, non-pecuniary. But even for that one, because they're personal friends? That's fine. Okay, it's all right. Councillor Shaw and I do not need to do it. Thank you. Members, before we continue with the main business of the meeting, I would like to move a motion without notice in line with Committee Procedure Rule 9C to take... Councillor Newport. Wait a minute, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. Just take some advice from the monitoring officer. As a member of Rayleigh Town Council, do I need to declare an interest? No. For everything?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Angela Law sent out last Thursday for all members of the council. We had a dispensation. As I'll continue, I'd like to move a motion without notice in line with the Committee Procedure Rule 9C to take items 9 and 10 relating to the Civic Centre, Hockley Road, Rayleigh first. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Are all members agreed? Please raise their hands.
Yes, that's agreed.
Thank you. You can lower your hands, so otherwise I'll be done. No, that was unanimous, wasn't it?
It was.
Agenda items 9 and 10, members. Katie Fowler will present the officer's report, which include information for both items 9 and 10. And item 10 is seeking listed building consent for the same application. But please be mindful these will be voted on separately. So we will hear all the facts about the applications, but we will vote on them separately. Thank you. Katie.
Thank you, Chairman. So the application is for the demolition of modern extensions to the Civic Suite and the erection of a block of 9 flats and 3 dwellings with associated parking, amenity space and ancillary buildings. As can be seen from the location plan, the site is enveloped by Hockley Road, Webster's Way and Ball Lane. It is within the Rayleigh Conservation Area and adjoins to, but excludes Barringtons, which is this building here. The site borders along Highfield Crescent to the east and Ball Lane to the south. It is understood that the Beacon House to the south of the site is made up by residential properties. So this is this building down here. And if we just look at this photograph, just for a bit of context, this building here fronts onto Webster's Way and is believed to be a commercial unit, but this building here is believed to be a residential unit. So to the west of the site is Burley House, which is just located here. And this is understood again to be made up by residential flats, but also a surgery. And just looking at this photo of the internal, we're presuming this is the door to the residential flats, and then this is the door to the surgery. So the site is also within close proximity to the Grade 2 star listed Holy Trinity Church and the Grade 2 listed Old Parish Rooms and Barrington's Cottages. The existing site is made up by Barrington's, the Civic Suite and the car park and amenity spaces to the rear. Planning permission and listed building consent is sought for the demolition of the modern extensions to the rear of Civic Suite. So these are these parts here, hatched in red. These are the 1964 extensions referred to in the report. The building containing the council chambers and members' library would be maintained and altered to accommodate the change of use to office accommodation. So this is this part of the building here. These alterations include the insertion of a staircase, toilets, the removal of some of the wall to accommodate a doorway, and alterations to fenestration on the south and eastern elevations. A number of trees would also be removed, and these can also be seen on the demolition plan, as well as the retaining wall that adjoins to the market car park. Planning permission is also sought for the construction of two buildings referred to as Block 2 and Block 3. Block 2 would front Webster's Way, and this can be seen, the front elevation here on the bottom right of this plan. Block 2 would front Webster's Way, and the ridge height would step down to follow the topography of the street. It would be two-storey with dormer windows serving the loft space as a third floor. There are a number of gable end projections as well as a bay window feature fronting Webster's Way. Block 3 would be situated on the corner of Webster's Way and Ball Lane and would form an L shape. Block 3 would encompass staggered heights to follow the topography of the site. Plot 3.1, which fronts Webster's Way, would be two-storey with dormer windows and which would serve the loft space. The two dwellings facing Ball Lane would also be two-storey. So this is the property facing Webster's Way, and this one here would front Ball Lane. During the course of the application, amendments were sought to the design of blocks 2 and 3, which included the reduction in ridge height, removal of flat roofs, and replacement with pitched roofs and alterations to the dormers to be policy compliant. So the plans depict this red line, which was the height of the original submitted buildings. If I just go back to block 2, we can see that on these ones as well. So we see how the building has been reduced to accommodate for that. In addition, the scheme also proposes the construction of 3 ancillary outbuildings. So we can see these here. We've got the bin store, the cycle store, and the plant store. The enclosure and incorporation of part of Market Car Park into the site is also proposed to facilitate additional parking spaces. And here we have the visualizations of how the new buildings would appear within the street scene of Webster's Way. So this one is taken from the top of Webster's Way, positioned in front of the Holy Trinity Church, looking down Webster's Way. And this one is taken looking up Webster's Way, so we can see the Holy Trinity Church in the background there. The key material considerations are the impact on the conservation area and nearby listed buildings, impact on residential amenity spaces, highways and parking, trees and drainage. It is considered that the impact that the development would have upon the nearby listed buildings, most notably Barrington's, would be acceptable. The development would not be considered to adversely impact the setting or significance of any nearby listed buildings. The amendments sought have reduced the height of the development to below the ridge height of Barrington's, so that the building is considered to have a greater subsidiary appearance than was originally submitted. In light of these amendments, which have been discussed and are outlined in the report, Place Services listed buildings and conservation officers have withdrawn their initial objection and are now in support of the application. In addition, the application is considered to improve the appearance of this area of the conservation area. Members may be aware that the Rayleigh Conservation Area Appraisal identifies this area as unattractive and the most problematic part of the conservation area. It has been considered that the development would provide an attractive addition to Webster's Way, establishing a function to this part of the conservation area as opposed to it being used to service the high street. The increase in ridge heights of the buildings rising up towards Barrington's would draw the eye towards the Holy Trinity Church, and this is a relationship that is well established within the historic plan of Rayleigh High Street also. In light of this, officers consider the proposals would therefore be compliant with the NPPF. The impact upon the neighbours to Highfield Crescent and Bull Lane have been given considerable weight within the application. It has been considered that the development would not amount to an unreasonable impact upon the neighbouring properties. A separation of over 35 metres would be maintained between the block of flats and the existing dwellings, which is considered to be an acceptable relationship and appropriate for the town centre location. And just for reference, this is block 2 here, and so the 35 metre distance is with regard to the properties on Bull Lane here, and then Highfield Crescent, which are just outside of the map. The proposed dwellings within block 3 would be compliant with the council's 45-degree test, which ensure no unacceptable overshadowing occurs. So this is this block down here. It is not considered that an unreasonable degree of overlooking would occur given the development is within a town centre. Where it is felt that there would be an unacceptable overlooking, this can be controlled by planning condition, requiring these windows to be obscure glazed and fixed shut below a height of 1.7 metres, which has been applied here in relation to the second floor windows of block 2 facing Highfield Crescent. So it's on at this elevation here, and the first and second floor windows on the southern elevation of block 2 serving the lounges, which is this elevation here. In addition, a condition has been recommended to install a fence along the common boundary with number 1 Bull Lane to preserve the amenity of these occupiers, and this is this boundary along here. The proposal is therefore considered compliant with policy DM1 and DM3 of the Development Management Plan in this regard. The proposed flats would be provided with an amenity space between block 2 and Barrington's, which is outlined here. The dwellings within block 3 would be provided with private amenity spaces, which can be seen just on the lower part of the map and are separated by the orange lined boundaries. The garden sizes would for the most part be compliant. Where the amenity space of plot 3.1 would be below the requirements, it is considered that given the town centre location and proximity to King George's playing fields, the provision would be acceptable in this circumstance. And it's just this plot here that is below that. The application site would provide 15 car parking spaces for the residential properties, this being 2 spaces per dwelling and 1 space per flat. A historic agreement requires 20 car parking spaces to be maintained for Barrington's, and a further 10 car parking spaces would be provided for the commercial use within the Civic Suite. And on this map, it clearly depicts how these would be displayed on site. So the residential spaces would have a different colour paving to the commercial spaces, so that the differentiation is clear. So the number of spaces proposed here are considered acceptable. There would be a loss of 18 spaces within the market car park, but this is also considered acceptable. The survey conducted by Rochford Council in 2019 has allowed for the application to conclude that the other car parks within the Rayleigh Town Centre would be able to facilitate the loss of parking. The commercial spaces within the application site would be available to the public during the weekend. It should be noted that as the survey was conducted in 2019, it is considered that the use of these car parks would now be less than at the time of the survey due to the impact of COVID-19 on the High Street. The development is considered acceptable by district officers and the county highway. So the development would result in the loss of 6 trees, including the loss of a sycamore and oak tree. And if I just return to the demolition plan, we can see that this is the sycamore tree here, and this is the oak tree that would be lost. The loss of the oak tree has not been objected to due to its poor health. However, the council's arboricultural officer has objected to the loss of the sycamore tree. The council did enter into discussions with the applicant in the hope of being able to retain the sycamore. However, due to the heritage constraints on the site, the buildings have had to comprise a greater footprint than height in order to make the scheme viable. Therefore, the applicant was not able to retain this tree. There are 10 trees proposed to be planted, and officers have included a condition on the addendum which has required these trees to be planted with a heavy girth of 16 to 18 centimetres to mitigate the loss of the existing trees as far as possible. It has also been queried with the council's arboricultural officer about whether the sycamore could be moved and replanted elsewhere in the site. However, the officer considered that given the extent of the roots of this tree, it would be difficult to find an appropriate area within the site to facilitate this. In addition, a condition has been recommended to plant an additional tree between plots 3.1 and 3.2. So this is just at the bottom of the site here, to provide further amenity from the landscaping scheme. Therefore, it is considered that given the constraints on the site, the development would be acceptable and compliant with policy DM25. Part of the site to the immediate rear of the existing Civic Suite building is located within an area of high surface water flooding, and that is approximately this area just here. By the bin stall. Yeah. The scheme would use bypass separators and an attenuation geocellular crate to achieve a sustainable drainage strategy. In light of additional information that was submitted by the applicant, the lead local flood authority have withdrawn their objection, and it is considered that the scheme would appropriately manage surface water runoff and not increase flood risk off-site. There are matters on the addendum, Chairman, including additional planning conditions, amended planning conditions, and additional neighbour consultation letters, and members will see on the addendum that there are amendments to conditions 2, 13, 15 and 16, as well as 3 additional conditions, which are numbers 29, 30 and 31, relating to the impact on trees. The application is recommended for approval subject to a legal agreement set out in the heads of terms in the report and the conditions within the officer recommendation subject to those amendments on the addendum and the inclusion of 3 extra conditions. And can members note a minor change to condition 6 to change the wording from block 1 to block 2?
Thank you. We have 3 speakers, public speakers for this item. The first one will be Councillor Deborah Mercer from Raleigh Town Council. You have 5 minutes, and I will let you know when you've had 4, and that will apply to all speakers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The District Council has proposed replacing the Civic Suite with 9 new homes in a low-rise apartment block, 3 townhouses and a new office block on the site next to BTMK Todman Solicitors. The Solicitor's office is housed in Barrington's, a Grade 2 listed building built in the mid-19th century and situated in the Raleigh Conservation Area within close proximity to another Grade 2 listed building, the Holy Trinity Church. The Town Council would like to object to proposals made on several points. The scheme is not sympathetic to the adjacent Grade 2 listed building under the National Planning Policy Framework 16190C, the desirability of the new development making a positive contribution to local character and distinctiveness. It fails to preserve the character or appearance of the Raleigh Conservation Area and has the potential to affect the setting of our heritage asset along Ball Lane, King George V playing field. It is an overdevelopment of the site adjacent to a listed building in a conservation area. SBD 2 14.4 states that the scale and form of the proposed development will be crucial in the design of a successful scheme, and a development which is out of scale and unduly obtrusive to the outlook of surrounding development will be refused. The new dwellings will create an increase in noise, air pollution and traffic. Access to the site is on an extremely busy Hockley Road, as well as adjacent to the constantly congested Webster's Way, and the increase in traffic from the new residents, the workers in the new office block and the amenity collections will put further pressure and pollution on the town, not taking into account the construction traffic needed to access the site during the construction process. The District Council's own policy, SBD 2 14.2c, states that any access to a backland site which is in close proximity to existing dwellings and would detrimentally affect the visual and residential amenity of those dwellings by virtue of noise, dust or fumes, disposal of rubbish or create road safety problems will be refused. Its scale, form, mass would not preserve the character or appearance of the Raleigh Conservation Area, and the proposed scale of the buildings will result in an over-dominant and crowding of the plot. The development is not in keeping with the street scene and not considerate to neighbouring properties as set out in SPD 6 3.6. The individual elements of a new development must be related proportionally to each other, and the form must be appropriate to its immediate neighbours and any important features on surrounding buildings. The parking standards and good practice supplementary planning document shows that there should be a minimum of 23 parking spaces for the residential development, but only 15 has been allocated. The local plan shows that a number of public car parking spaces will be lost, including 2 electric charging spaces which have an impact on a busy town centre, with this land being taken for the site. There are concerns on the size of the garden spaces for the townhouses, which should comply with SPD 2 3.2, with 2-bedroom properties requiring a minimum of 50 metres square and the 4-bedroom property requiring a minimum depth of 2.5 times the width of the house and a minimum of 50 metres squared. The flat should be in line with SPD 2 3.3, minimum balcony area of 5 metres square. Ground floor flat should have a minimum patio garden of 50 metres square, or a usable communal garden space with a minimum of 25 metres square per flat, which equals 225 square metres. The grass verge on Ball Lane is also to be utilised as pathways to the dwellings, resulting in a loss of this amenity. Mature trees have been earmarked for the development, earmarked for removal due to the location of the proposed apartment building, even though they provide amenity value and will take years to replace. There is concern over the protection of tree roots from works and the damage that may occur from construction. The increase in residents in this area will have an impact on already overstretched services such as GPs, schools and NHS and dentists. Rayleigh now has even less NHS dentists now that the Smile Centre will be going private from the 1st of June 2022. We urge councillors to reject this proposal on the objections put forward by the Town Council.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you for your Our second speaker tonight is Mr. Peter Buist. I hope I've said that right, and he's on behalf of the applicants. So if you would like to come up here, I do apologise if I said your name wrong. Thank you. Again, you will have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you've done 4. Thank you.
Good evening, members. My name's Peter Buist from Purcell Architects. We've been the architects and heritage consultants for the application. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of the applicant, GB Partnerships Rochford, in support of the proposals for the Civic Suite site. GBP has been working with Rochford District Council through the Asset Delivery Programme to bring forward this application. Purcell, accompanied by a full design team of specialist consultants, has been instructed by GBP to develop the proposals. Our proposals for the Civic Suite site are for a mixed-use development providing residential and commercial accommodation. The proposals will support the town centre of Rayleigh by delivering ongoing employment on the site, as well as sustainable town centre dwellings that meet local housing needs. The site comprises the former Civic Suite, bounded by Hockley Road to the north, Webster's Way to the west, and Bull Lane to the south, and includes a small corner of the adjoining market car park. The application and associated proposals have been prepared in accordance with the policies of the adopted development plan and the NPPF. The proposals are the result of extensive dialogue with RDC and advising conservation officers, both at pre-application and application determination stages, whereby design amendments have been incorporated to respond to comments received. The proposals comprise the restoration and conversion of the retained council chamber block that fronts Hockley Road to provide modern, flexible office space. The later 20th century council office extension is proposed to be demolished. 2 new residential buildings are located towards the southern half of the site. The Grade 2 listed building, known as Barrington's, located towards the north of the site, and to which the retained council building adjoins, is not part of the application. To the north of the site is the Grade 2 star listed Holy Trinity Church, and the site itself is located within the Rayleigh Conservation Area. The application proposes approximately 300 square metres of commercial office space within the retained council building, and the new residential buildings will provide 12 dwellings, of which 2 are affordable. The new residential buildings have been designed to remain subservient to the listed Barrington's building, whilst creating a new street frontage onto Webster's Way. The separation of the new dwellings from Barrington's and from each other maintains views through the site along Webster's Way. The massing of the proposed new residential buildings is deliberately kept below the height of Barrington's, with the highest ridge of the central residential block being 1 metre below the ridge height of Barrington's. The massing of the new building steps down towards the southern end of the site in parallel with the change in topography. The new buildings are proposed as 2 and 2.5 stories in height, with upper floors located within roofscapes so as to reduce the massing. The forms of the new buildings are deliberately broken up into distinct blocks to reflect the historic gables and floor spans that are common within the conservation area and create a series of defined frontages and interesting roofscapes onto Webster's Way and Bull Lane. The new buildings have been designed to reflect a subservient and subtly contemporary interpretation of Barrington's. Materially, they are proposed in white brick with slate and lead roofs. The proportions of new windows draw reference from the listed building, and the use of traditional timber cladding reflects the surrounding vernacular of Rayleigh. Panels of herringbone brickwork adds a subtle detail to the elevations. Rear-facing windows to the new dwellings have been carefully positioned to avoid any overlooking of adjacent dwellings. There are no upper floor balconies proposed to the new dwellings for the same reason. The new residential accommodation will be constructed to a high standard of energy efficiency, using high levels of thermal insulation to minimise energy use and utilising electrical air source heat pumps for heating. Again, there will be no reliance on fossil fuels for the development. The scheme provides 45 car parking spaces, of which 30 are designated for commercial use and 15 for residential use. Vehicle charging points for the commercial and residential spaces are provided, with infrastructure laid for future installations when needed. Refuse storage and cycle storage is also provided within the landscaped areas at the site. The scheme does involve the redesign of a proportion of the adjacent market car park. This area of the car park is presently inefficient in terms of parking space arrangement, and therefore the proposals have been developed to minimise the loss of public parking spaces. The existing public electric vehicle charging points are unaffected by the proposals. The proposals retain the existing vehicular access to the site from Hockley Road, and the transport statement states that trip reduction during peak times will be reduced from the previous use of the site as council offices. The master plan extends the green space to the south of the listed building. This area will be used as shared amenity space, and following an arboricultural survey of the site, all Class A trees are retained on the site. The existing mature trees to the north and south of Barringtons are retained, and the new memorial tree will be planted with the existing plaque relocated. Unfortunately, and after many options were explored, the existing tree adjacent to the bus shelter is proposed to be removed, but in recognition of the loss of this tree, new trees are provided along the frontage of Webster's Way, as well as within the site. I would like to thank members for considering this application and invite you to support your officer's recommendation to grant consent for the application. Thank you.
The members of the public, can we not barrack anyone, please, or will I have to ask you to remove yourselves? Speaker number 3 is Ms. Gabrielle Peters, who is the objector. Thank you. And again, Ms. Peters, you have 5 minutes. I'll give you what you've done for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Gabby Peters and I live at 1 Ball Lane, which is directly adjacent to this proposed building. I object to the Civic Suite planning development submitted by Rochford District Council Development Partnership and GB Partnerships, and I'm here to ask you to reject the plans. I thank the Rayleigh councillors for sticking up for us and also objecting to the plans. I know that they have submitted a spatial options response to the district's local plan opposing all development on our conservation areas. I choose to live in Rayleigh's town conservation area for a reason. It's one of the very few green areas left in our town, and this area is designated as non-residential space. My home was built in the 1890s and is an undesignated heritage site, and is due to its limited foundations, it will not be able to sustain the building work that's planned. My home will forever be damaged, potentially a risk to my safety. My entire home will be permanently overlooked, causing 100% change in my amenities, and as I no longer be able to use my garden. Only including obscure glass on the 3rd floor of the flats means that the 2nd floor and both of the flats and the houses will see directly into every part of my garden and all of my rear windows. Erecting a 1.8 metre fence will make no difference when every window on the rear of the proposed flats will look into my garden and rear windows. My privacy and my neighbours' privacy will be gone. However, a railing is being erected for the privacy of Barringtons, Todmans, and the proposed flats. Why are they entitled to privacy, but I'm not? And yet, as I understand, the solicitors own the covenants which gives them the right to access over the community amenity space for the flats, and they are sharing them with them. The position of the townhouses and the flats will reduce the light in my home. Whilst these might not be material considerations in the planning world, I want you all to know that this planned development has already had a significant impact on my physical and mental health, and I personally will bear the brunt of this development. I understand homes are needed, but this is not the right place for them. And the Civic Suite was never included in the local plans. Flats and townhouses are not in keeping with the current street scene and or the character of Ball Lane. My home and those adjacent are either 2 stories or bungalows. The listed buildings next to the site will be impacted. I understand the windows on the Civic Suite are being amended from the current aluminium frames to wood to put them back to the local look of the area, and yet the proposed flats have aluminium frames. Further example of how this is not in keeping with the environment. I understand one of the councillor's pledges is to plant over 30,000 trees a year, and yet surely destroying the trees that are here and have been here for decades, even centuries, cannot be in keeping with this pledge. While planting shrubs and saplings is a start, it will take too long for them to do the same job as the already in situ mature trees. Can the magnolias, the plum trees, the olive tree not be relocated along the border of my property to obscure the view? I realise the sycamore might be pushing it a little bit. The new properties will bring additional people and traffic, which will cause more noise and access to the parking for the flats. The new properties will bring additional people and traffic, which will cause more noise, and access to the parking for the flats will cause more congestion on an already regularly gridlocked road. Further additional losses of the public parking spaces, both in the civic site and the market car park, will impact the overall town. This will result in additional illegal parking along both Ball Lane and Highfield Crescent. The lack of adequate car parking on the site further demonstrates that this is an overdevelopment within the conservation area. The development will increase traffic and impact the air pollution
1 minute to go.
already exceeding legal limits in this area. And this cannot be allowed. And how will it be monitored? And will any action be taken if it is exceeded? I'm not able to attend a dentist in the local area due to the overburdened service. Additional people will impact on that further. Finally, the corner of Ball Lane is a very busy junction. There is no crossing for children to safely get to King George's Park. There have been at least 2 serious accidents that I'm aware of in the last few years. This development will increase the risk on the line of sight. And while I appreciate that the highways have discarded this from their claim, they should stand and watch this road for several days, and they would definitely amend their opinion. Thank you for listening, and I sincerely hope that you do or refuse this application that's been put before you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I will now give priority to the ward member, which will be Councillor Mike Wilkinson. Would you like to speak? Yeah, 5 minutes. Again, 5. Yeah, please do so. Yeah, so it saves people running around with microphones. And again, Councillor Wilkinson, you'll have 5 minutes. 1 minute to go. Otherwise,
Thank you.
as you know.
Chairman, members of the Development Committee, there are several aspects of this proposal which cause me serious concerns. On a personal level, I do not support any residential housing on this site. Added to that, more importantly in my view, the public perception is that they don't want it there either. It's their town, so quite while we appear to not be listening to them is slightly worrying to say the least. But if we park that for a second and accept that there appears to be a political will to build on the site, I will turn to specific aspects of the proposal itself. I'd like to firstly remind members that there is a clause within the, remind members that the conditional contract of the sale for the land specifically includes a clause allowing the council to act as a local planning authority completely independently from any obligation it may have or may not have made to sell the land under the contract between Rochester District Council and GB Partnerships. So therefore, there's absolutely no compulsion on any member of this committee to pass this application due to the contract already signed. This proposal is being sold to you as policy compliant, but I'm afraid I disagree. This site is within the conservation area of Rayleigh Town Centre. The Rayleigh Area Action Plan informs us in 1963 the Rayleigh Civic Society was formed to oppose the inappropriate development being planned for the town, presumably by the then planning authority. 1969, areas of the town, including this site, were designated a conservation area, and the policy acknowledges that it's due to the formation of this civic society that the heritage buildings of the town survive today. So 5 decades ago, residents of this town did their utmost to preserve the conservation area in Rayleigh, and this council in 2015 has continued that work by creating and adopting the Rayleigh Area Action Plan. Policy 8 of that plan states that development within the town centre should not result in the overall loss of car parking, which plays a critical role in supporting the businesses in the town. The vitality and viability of those businesses, it states. Yet, this proposal will see the removal of 18 car parking spaces out of an overall total of 73 which exist today. Members, that's a removal of 25% of the overall parking in that car park. We've been informed about a pre-COVID survey that was conducted. Personally, I don't recall this survey or any other residents in Rayleigh that I've spoken to. The reduction in car parking spaces, I would suggest, is clearly contrary to policy. The design of the new buildings is simply not in keeping with the existing street scene. There are some fine examples of historic buildings within the conservation area, the old school, now a restaurant opposite Barrington's being a case in point. And whilst I do acknowledge that Peter Buis, the architect, has made some very valid points on this subject at the member presentation last month, with respect to him, this design is far from acceptable in this location. The planned new buildings will have a negative rather than positive relationship with the surrounding buildings, which is not only necessary in all builds, but particularly when the building within the conservation area. This is contrary to policy DM1. It is out of keeping with the existing street scene and therefore contrary to policy DM3. Its design is such that it will have a detrimental impact on the historic environment, also contrary to policy DM3. Members, you've heard from Gabby Peters, who lives next door to this development. In her submission, she states that she will suffer loss of privacy due to overlooking. A 1.8 metre high fence is not sufficient to provide privacy to her rear garden. I would support her argument that if this development were to go ahead, then there should be an additional condition of approval that a line of mature trees is planted along the entire boundary wall between number 1 Bull Lane and the car park. Chairman, members, we have seen the other aspects of this proposal brought forward as part of the asset delivery programme. Those in Rochford, I support. I congratulate the way in which the design team have worked to design an extension to the Freight House, which is totally in keeping with the existing building. Yet in Rayleigh, we see a proposal that is totally out of keeping with the location. It is designed to maximise a financial gain from the site by putting housing on the land. It is wholly inappropriate design for the location, and personally I'm angry that the residents of Rayleigh are being asked to put up with a design such as this in our town to finance a sympathetically designed building in Rochford. It is not acceptable and it's not policy compliant. This application plans to remove 18 public car parking spaces to provide necessary car parking for the new residents on that site, so it's policy compliant. This, I would suggest, is indicative the site is being overdeveloped. Reduce the amount of housing on there, thereby reducing the need for car parking spaces, thereby reducing the need to take public car parking away from the town. Members, I therefore urge you to dismiss this application for the above reasons. It breaches of policy DM1, policy DM3 and policy 8 of the Radio Action Plan. Added to that, in its current form, this proposal requires removal of a tree which a professional arboricultural officer has stated should not be removed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I will now go ask visiting members if they would like to speak. Councillor Wootton. Yeah, I'll put them on.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members. I know that you and your colleagues will quite rightly focus on the planning aspects of the applications before you this evening, which relate to 3 of 6 component sites of Rochford District Council's asset delivery programme. However, given the significant public interest, and as a courtesy to the audience here tonight, it is appropriate to give advance notice and share the contents of a press release which will be issued later this week. As leader of this authority, I made a promise to listen to the consultation process early last year on site both in Rayleigh and Rochford. In May, I promised to pause and reflect on that messaging in order to deliver positive outcomes. I have done just that and worked very closely with the partnership panel under the excellent chairmanship of Councillor Robin Dray. As a result, I can categorically confirm and clarify that moving forwards, there will be no residential development on the Mill Hall site. The car parks either side of the current Mill Hall will remain with similar capacity to the existing. A new, superior, multi-purpose community building will be constructed to include a hall with seating capacity and flexible space to accommodate up to 250 people to replace the existing mill hall. I should add that it is my own perception that the current building is unlikely to be able to be cost-effectively refurbished and reconfigured to meet modern environmental standards and long-term sustainability, both structurally and financially. However, the option to refurbish will not be discounted at this stage until further work has been carried out to give an informed view. Public engagement and consultation is vital in the process as we move forward, and I assure residents that will happen, albeit I accept consensus and agreement will not always be possible. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Newport, would you like to come and... Councillor Newport. Again, you'll have, sorry, you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Members, I believe that in our district it is our duty as members to promote sustainable, high-quality housing developments. That means that we should look to set an example to private developers. Reading this application, it falls very short of these high standards that our residents expect of us, and as such, this application has drawn a huge negative response from the community. This should carry great weight in the minds of the committee. In determining this application, the committee should think very carefully about the ramifications of the location of the proposed development within our precious conservation area. Would this set a precedent for other residential developments of a similar nature, and would it be hard for our council to defend against in the future? This site is not within our allocations plan adopted in 2014, and therefore the minor impact to the HDT, in my opinion, is outweighed by the environmental and sustainability factors. The officer's report relies on a transport assessment which was produced in December 2021. This does not give sufficient weight to the new hierarchy of road users within the Highway Code, which came into effect in January 2022. I have heard many times that our council is seeking to promote an infrastructure-first approach to development. A basic requirement is one of healthcare. Although the developer has agreed to a Section 106 payment of just £5,700, I do not believe this will mitigate the effects of this development. As it stands, and as previously been mentioned, there are no NHS dentists with capacity in Rayleigh, and I have personally contacted Mark Francois, the MP, to look at how the government and the NHS England will be able to provide capacity. As yet, I have not received a response to their future plans. The Council would be well advised to ask the CCG to reassess the contribution needed to help mitigate the proposed development. From the officer's report, page 9.32, paragraph 3.102, states that the application does not have an air quality assessment submitted. It's an alarming omission given the regular queuing traffic on Webster's Way and the street-facing proposed fenestration, as the whole world has woken up to the fact that poor air quality is a life-threatening factor in our environment. Here is Rochford District Council accepting a poor application that dismisses air quality with a simple, the proposed development would not necessitate the need for any required mitigation in respect of air quality. However, it should not be overlooked that the air quality has also been omitted to be referenced in the construction management plan on page 9.43, paragraph 2, and makes no provision for the pollution caused through any demolition works. Cannot be emphasised strongly enough that this omission of an air quality report should be given great weight by the committee, and I would strongly urge the committee to refuse the application. In summary, I ask the committee to refuse this application. The committee should stand up for the residents of our district and not be complicit in this wanton destruction of our town, its infrastructure and heritage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cripps, please.
Thank you. Can I have the red line plan up there, please?
Again, you will have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left. Thank you.
Thank you. I've read the 100-odd material considerations in the committee's report, but I've got limited time, so I've had to narrow it down to 4 that I think are most appropriate. Number 1, non-compliance with NPPF policy paragraph 202, which relates to conservation areas being reused for something else. The Development Committee cite that NPPF policy and para 202, but the proposal is non-compliant. I can see no evidence of public benefits that outweigh the change of use harm to the conservation area status. I can see no public benefits. Item 2, overdevelopment of the Civic Suite site, shown by the red plan up there. The proposal drawing indicates a large-scale incursion into the public car parking area. That's the protrusion to the right. That car footprint is significant in size. It actually equals the space proposed for the 3 intended houses at the lower end of the site. I think that's a clear overdevelopment in spilling out of the site in order to complete housing at the bottom on a conservation area. Item 3, I see the use of the public car park as an unsustainable planning approach. The planning authority know full well that the existing local plan is still 50% before it's complete, which will generate more loading. There's a second local plan coming through the system to us, which is double the size of the existing local plan, which will increase loading. There's forever ongoing windfall developments generating more people. So the load on that car park is going to go up, not down. And giving up 25% of it, I don't believe is the right way to go. That, to me, is unsustainable planning. And the word unsustainable appears in the NPPF policy 1,000 times. Item 4, inconsistent parking policy. The NHS scanner unit was charged £3,000 for temporary use of 6 bays. This proposal sees 18 bays for life sacrificed to support a private business. I'm not sure that that is actually a planning matter. I think it's more of a constitutional issue, i.e. not acting in the best interest of the public. Because apart from the inconvenience of civic parking being reduced, in the long term, that's a quite huge loss of income. I therefore believe that this particular development on this particular site is inappropriate. I therefore appeal to the Development Committee to reconsider all these aspects, because I believe it will bring a lasting negative impact on the town. And so I look for a move to refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other visiting member of the council, do they wish to speak, please? Please indicate. No. So we'll go through to committee now. So we'll go to the ward member, which is Councillor Jack Longman, sorry.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened quite intently this evening and I've heard a lot of issues brought up, which obviously I've been looking at myself. But before I do anything or say anything, is it possible?
Sorry.
Sorry, no, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, sorry. Go on. No, I wasn't being rude. Someone else indicated. Sorry.
Right. Before I go into what I want to say, is I wonder if I might ask the officers just a couple of questions. to clarify something.
Yeah, but you will you'll be the same as the others. You will have 5 minutes, Councillor Lorman. Okay.
Well, with their answer, will that take my 5 minutes?
You've still only got 5 minutes. I'm sorry. Everyone's got 5 minutes.
Right.
Because this is a long agenda.
Yeah, I understand that, but I am a
Right.
development committee member. Anyway, the
No, but
question is
even-
simply this. When we had the site meeting at the weekend, when we was given this, it was a very good site meeting. There was comment made about the car parking being used by the residents during the day, and at the weekends it would then be open to the public. So I need clarity to understand that particular issue, because who's going to run the car park? Is it a public car park or is it a private car park? Because if it's a public car park, then shouldn't these residents be paying to park there? If it's going to remain a public car park, should they be there at all? Or if it's going to be a private car park, how is this going to be managed? That's my question.
Right, stop.
Okay,
We've stopped the timer, so we'll get your answer.
right.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the existing arrangements for the BTMK car park and the Civic Suite car park is that it's an office car park for Monday to Friday between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And then at the weekends on a Saturday it becomes pay and display, and that is chargeable up until 1 p.m. and then after 1 p.m. it's free. So those parking arrangements as they exist will transfer onto this site, but it will only be the commercial spaces which have been shown as marked in a different material that will be available for the public. So there will still be public parking on the site.
So, Chairman, if I just clarify that then, so what you're saying is the people at the Barringtons will have a pecuniary advantage over the members of the public because they can park there freely.
Monday to Friday, yes, it will
So
be
the council is
exactly
going to
the
give them a
same.
pecuniary advantage.
Well, it's the same arrangement that's in
They're
place.
not paying
at-
for it, that's what I'm getting at.
They're not paying for it now,
It's,
Jack.
it's, Marcus.
Sorry, it's an existing contractual arrangement, Councillor Lorman, but it's also not material to the planning that we're considering this evening. So although it's probably of interest to councillors generally, it isn't material to the...
Well-
it's an existing arrangement that is going to continue, it's contractual, between Barringtons and the council. So it's part of the original covenants that exist with that building. So it just continues as it does now. But it's not a matter for planning this evening. Thank you.
Well,
Can I just step
yeah.
in? Sorry, can I just step in? And this was fully explained at the site visit on Saturday where I was present and you asked the questions.
Yeah, we asked a question, but
Yeah,
not
and
in
you were-
detail.
You were
Well-
given specific things. So,
Okay.
as Ward Councillor, have you anything else to say before I open it up to the rest of the committee, please?
Just one other question, just clarify, the wall going down number 1 Ball Lane, that's going to be knocked down and be made a wooden fence that you were saying? Or have I got that wrong? It's only because of my hearing on...
So it hasn't been proposed to be demolished. I've just recommended a condition on the application to install a 1.8 metre closed board fence. So that could run alongside that brick wall to preserve the amenity.
So it'd be like 2 skins sort of thing?
Yeah, if I just scroll down on this plan. So this plan shows that the existing brick wall along here would be retained. So we have just conditioned a fence to then be installed alongside that.
Okay, thank you. Right, if I may now continue. Right.
Well, we never stopped you continuing, Councillor Norman. It was you who stopped yourself.
Well,
by
I have
asking
questions, Chairman. Anyway,
Thank you.
the point is that I've tried to understand all of this, and I don't know if if I have to declare it or what, but I am on the asset management group. So,
You've been given dispensation.
yes, I understand
Yes,
that, but
so
the
you
public
don't
are
have to-
listening, so I want people to know my
stop.
position.
You've been given dispensation, so you do not need to already say that. Angela Law
Okay.
said this right at the beginning. Thank
Right,
you.
to continue on then, I've looked at this in the best way I possibly can, and I wonder if you could just really, I think the easiest way is if that picture, that artist's impression, looking from Ball Lane, or either way, yeah. What I wanted to say first of all, before I go into this, is that we've heard a lot today by a lot of people about the conservation area. Now, this goes back, let's be fair, to, this area has been mentioned in the Doomsday Book. All the buildings there, Barrington's, the cottage, Barrington's, the restaurant, if you like, Barrington's building, the Half Moon Public House, the church, all are grade 2 listed buildings. It's an important part of this Rayleigh Town Centre. That's why it's been brought up so many times, and that is why we have a conservation area. So I just wanted to emphasise that, because when I look at that picture there, and I see in the documents here, page 919, item 342, there's a comment that says, SP6, D6 have also advised there's an appropriate materials for windows in conservation areas, noting that the windows are one of the most prominent features integral to building, for the character and require careful consideration. Now, it's already been mentioned, but when you look at that, we're looking at black anodised windows of plain glass. So I cannot see how that reflects on the conservation area or has any sympathy whatsoever for the local surroundings. And then you take the back of the Barringtons, and I did ask on the day of the meeting that you were going to retain the Georgian-style windows to the left-hand side of the rear of the Barringtons, but all the others were, again, going to be plain aluminium windows. Now, this is an opportunity for, when they designed all of this, to if you like, enhance and fill in the characteristics of the local conservation area. And when I look at this and the plainness of the buildings, and then when you look at that picture that I showed you, and you look from the corner of Ball Lane, you can see the other picture. Yes, please. If you look behind those two people standing with a child, it's just two houses locked together with a plain brick wall. And what I'm looking at here is a totally unsympathetic approach to the conservation area. And I cannot see, and I've listened intently with interest to what has been said, I cannot see how that at all meets the requirements of the conservation area. It just doesn't gel as a design. But then you keep talking about these ones on the second block here as houses. They're blocks of flats, they're not houses. And so I can't really see how this fits in with the street scene. It just doesn't gel. And if you look, which you can't see there, on the other side of the road, buildings on the other side have got Georgian sash type windows. It doesn't comply, or has got no sympathy with that conservation scene. It's completely out of character. Now, if we just go on to the other side which talks about the car parking, which is obviously an issue. If that block 1 was made smaller, perhaps that car park could have been squeezed a bit further in behind the Barringtons. But it seems to me that the size of it pushes the car parking facility out into the car park. We lose a quarter of that car park. Now, we keep hearing this about car parks and flats and all this sort of thing.
Councillor Lorman.
Thank you. And then we hear all the time about how residents can park nearby and so on. But that is very busy, if you know the area, with the restaurant, with the church, with, say, the British Legion halls, except top end. You'll have residents, visitors parking there. And we're going to reduce the size of that car park. And I just think it's an overdevelopment. And I have to say, I concede to what many of the things that have been said, that this is out of feature. It's uncharacteristic. It doesn't meet the street scene. And I think it's an overdevelopment. And I cannot support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Is there any other... Have we any other members? Councillor, I thought you had, yeah, Councillor Stanley. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes, Councillor Stanley. 1 minute to go. And who else?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
I've listened to all the residents' views and the members' comments, and I've made some notes, believe it or not. But first of all, I would like to move that we refuse this application on the basis of DM1, DM3 and Policy 8 of the Area Action Plan. The proposal housing development is contrary to this council's current local plan, which designates this land for commercial purposes. To allow this development would set an unprecedented for Rayleigh and the historic and for other town centres in the district. The development would be out of form and density, which would be out of keeping with the well-established character of the conservation area and detrimental to its appearance and display. The development would be contrary to RDC's policy on conservation areas. To the openness of the gardens would be a great loss to the conservation area. Overlooking the neighbouring properties of loss of privacy from all floors of the element of that building. That's the centre building. Inadequate parking provision within the site for existing and proposal uses, as we already know, is of only 15 spaces. With resulting loss of public parking, provision within the town would be detrimental to the livelihood of the town centre. The development would be visually intrusive to the outlook to residents of Ball Lane and Highfield Crescent and to the conservation area. The development would be detrimental to the street scene, as we've already heard, in this conservation area, and represents the overdevelopment of the site because of the large bulk of the buildings. It also has minimal amenity space and garden space and no closed join areas for the flats. Loss of trees. There are several trees that we will lose, and to get the size of those trees back again, we would have to plant 50, 60-year-old trees, which I don't believe we're going to do. Close to Main Road. We've got no air pollution monitoring at all on that corner, and we do know that there is a lot of traffic on that road at busy times of the day, and that includes Saturdays as well, where we see the car parks are full. Although the local plan permits us to put rooms above shops, the policy does not allow residential developments in the historic core of Raleigh Town Centre. The application goes against this council's policy for Raleigh Town Centre and the conservation area. So again, I move to refuse this application. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor for refusal. Have we a seconder? Councillor Stanley, can you repeat your reasons for refusal, please?
Reasons for refusal relate to DM1, DM3 and Policy 8 of the Area Action Plan, as well as inconsistency and overdevelopment.
Yeah, can the officers, I'll start looking at the officers to respond to that, please. Whichever who's got a mic on, please. Oh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. During Councillor Stanley's address to the committee, we've got overlooking was also mentioned, inadequate parking provision, loss of public car parking, detrimental to the street scene, overdevelopment of the site, lack of amenity space, loss of trees, lack of an air quality assessment submitted with the application. Was there anything else? And contrary to Rochford District Council's conservation area policy. Yeah?
Conservation area policy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, we need votes on this, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, and just one further thing, out of keeping with density. Yeah, correct?
Density over development.
Not picking up.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Yeah, sorry, I had also comments you'd made in your initial statement about the form and the sort of scale, the appearance of the building in the street scene being visually intrusive in the conservation area, the large bulk of the building. But that all relates to your conservation
Thank you.
point in terms of it being out of keeping. Thank you.
This is comments. Councillor Weston, would you like to speak again on this? It's not on, Councillor Weston. You need to go around the no. You need to go around the little button, green button. That sounds like it's on. It was on. Yeah. It is on. Thank you, Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was listening again with all the by the ward members and the residents, and I totally agree that we should be supporting the residents. We should be listening to the residents, and again, I support Councillor Stanley wholeheartedly on this. So therefore, I will not be supporting this application. Thank you
very
Chairman.
much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. As often occurs with planning applications, there is a huge amount of emotion attached to them. I've been around this planning committee for many, many years, and I've heard all sorts of arguments. But what I need to do is just remind members that whatever the emotion of this application is, we are here to determine this application on planning matters. And I don't believe that the case has been put strongly enough. There are a number of planning issues that are material to the officer recommendation. There are jobs to be created in the conversion of the council offices. That is...
Members of the public, can you please give consideration to the speaker? Thank you.
That is something that our planning policies seek to promote. There is a demand for accommodation in the district. This application seeks to provide accommodation. This space is in a town centre location which is underutilised and does not offer significant amenity value. There is a building, what was a number of the council offices, which doesn't offer amenity value to the district and is due to be taken down as part of this application. Each of the formal planning consultees have not or are no longer objecting to what is being proposed. So emotionally, agree or not, in planning terms, which are the terms on which we must make a decision, in planning terms, I see that we have no option but to agree with the officer's recommendation. So my position in terms of Councillor Stanley's motion for rejection is that unfortunately I won't be able to support you on this, because I do not believe that in planning terms it can be substantiated. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we've got a motion on the table for refuse. Sorry, Councillor Foster. Yes, you are. Of course you are. This is a debate. Councillor Eaves, you won't be able to vote on. We're doing 9 and 10, so we won't. I don't think so.
Thank you, Chairman.
Right, referring to the officer's presentation and page 9.12, paragraph 3.3, the Rayleigh Conservation Area appraisal identified Webster's Way as failing to acquire any street scene that could be considered attractive and is the most problematic part of the conservation area. On page 9.46, paragraph 4.24, Place Services and Historic Buildings Conservation raised no objection to the demolition of the extension. And I would agree that the extension as a 60s brick building is not an attractive site for the conservation area. But in making that comment, they did raise concerns which they said had been overcome by conditions that re the proposed buildings. And I'd like to ask the officers to confirm whether or not those conditions could be met. And then some practical ones. How long would the demolition and the building take if approved, knowing that might influence voting? One of the points that was raised at the site visit was that the entrance and exit to the site is very tight, even for cars. And I wonder what mitigation would be in place to handle construction traffic. And finally, much has been made of the loss of 18 parking spaces. But I'd like to ask and understand, what does 18 represent as a percentage of the parking spaces in Rayleigh, including Webster's Way and the Mill? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. I'll hand over to the officers. Councillor Rees, would you like papers for this meeting?
I did give you mine.
You have, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In regard to the place services conditions, they have all been put on the recommended conditions and included within the report. So with regard to the construction traffic, it's not a planning material consideration of how the vehicles would access the site, so it hasn't been considered at this stage.
And the question about parking spaces?
Yeah, you've asked for us to work out a percentage. It's not that, again, it's not a planning matter. We haven't got the figures for us to be able to work out that percentage for you. What we have got are the survey results that are actually detailed in the report that actually show that the market car park is not used to full capacity, and it was on that basis.
May I just come back quickly on that,
Yes,
Chairman?
of course.
The point I'm trying to make is that the loss of 18 spaces are depicted as a big percentage, and actually it's a big percentage of a small car park, and there are bigger parking spaces nearby.
Thank you. Is there any other member wishing to speak? Councillor FD. Councillor Weston, can you pass the mic? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one real quick question, really. I'm sure it's taken into consideration, but I've read through the paperwork about number 1, Ball Lane, and I'm sure that any development there would have proper surveys done on number 1 to make sure there's no damage to the house. Just want to make sure that's clear.
So it's not a consideration within the planning application, but due to the proximity of the building, it would be a private matter that the developer would have to look at.
Thank you. Yeah. Arthur? No? Sorry. Councillor Williams. Is there any other member? Right, we've got a motion on the table for refusal. Members, can I have your hand, a show of hands to accept refusal? Recorded? Yes, you can. Wait a minute. Hold on. Yep. Would you like? Yeah, the officers would like to come back before we take the vote. Sorry.
Yeah, just before that, we just want to come back on one of the points that was raised in Councillor Stanley's reasons. is the lack of the air quality assessment report. What was taken into consideration is that the traffic movements that already exist at the site would not be materially increased, and therefore there would be no greater impact on air quality. And there is no... the actual site's not within an air quality management area or zone.
Thank you.
So what we were proposing with agreement is that we don't actually include the lack of air quality report within the reason for refusal.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, can you just be clear as to the reasons for refusal? So the Council could just read out, and if
Yeah, have you got
Councillor
draft reason for refusal?
Right, so you want the officers to do it?
So the list they've got, Councillor Stanley, if you could just listen for the reasons for refusal and see if you can confirm that you're happy before we go to the vote. Yeah?
Now, Councillor Stanley, can you, the officers will list out the reasons for refusal, and if you're happy, then we will go to the vote. So that the officers are going to now list out your reasons for refusal. And if you can say yes or no at the end, please. Thank you.
Okay, so the proposed development would be detrimental to the character and appearance of the conservation area, and due to its design, layout, insufficient amenity space and parking provision, would be considered to represent overdevelopment of the site contrary to policies DM1 and DM3 of the Development Management Plan and policy 8 of the Rayleigh Town Centre Area Action Plan, and Rayleigh Town Centre Area Action Plan. My apologies. And then what's this bit here? Oh, right. And then there's also to be inserted, sorry, we've just had to do this quite quickly. So combined with the loss of trees and the impact on the neighbouring property at Number Ball Lane. And what we will also do, Chair, is make sure that we include the relevant planning policies that refer to the loss of the trees that's not been quoted.
Thank you. Are you happy with that, Councillor Stanley? You can't keep adding if we've just...
I don't recall that.
I don't
being
recall that.
said.
You didn't mention that,
No.
Councillor Stanley.
No.
You didn't mention that at all. And are you still seconding that, Councillor Weston? Thank you. Right, members, we have a motion on the table for refusal. All in favour of refusal, please put your hands up and keep them up while the monitoring officer, Sonia will vote. Count the votes. Yeah, right.
Let's do the numbers first.
4. Members, sorry, you can lower your hands. Sorry, it's like being at school, isn't it? Members for or against? Show of hands, please. Yep. Thank you, members. Any abstentions? 1. That's it. Thank you.
So can those that want their votes recorded, please indicate.
Anyone, the members that wanted their votes recorded, please indicate now. Thank you, members who put that. So there's 4, 7 against and 1 abstention. As I noted before, we have 1 member that can't vote because he unfortunately arrived late. Thank you. That motion is now lost. So we'll go back to the original recommendation for approval. So can I have recommendation for item 9 is set out in paragraph 1.1 of the report on pages 9.1 through to 9.10, and with additional conditions 29, 30 and 31 set out on the pages 3 and 4 of the addendum. and amending conditions 2, 13, 15 and 16 set out on the pages 4 to 6 of the addendum. Members, can I have a show of hands? Oh, I need someone to second it, please. Oh, Councillor Phil Shaw. Thank you. I can't be. Members, can I have a show of hands for approval for this recommendation? And can you keep them up until they're counted? Thank you. Yeah, members, you can lower. Members against this recommendation, please have a show of hands. Thank you. Yeah, anyone? I'll ask that in a minute. Any abstentions, members? Right, now what members who want it recorded? Councillor Mrs Newport? Are they all the same? Thank you. Yeah, we've got one submission. Members, this motion has been carried as 7-4, 4 against, 1 abstention. Thank you. We will now go on to item 10 that has been discussed through to item 9. With item 9. Let me get my papers together. Where are we, Sonia?
So basically, Katie's already done the recommendations. Well, we've agreed to try and get the public speaker.
So do we have to ask anyone?
So, no, they don't. So I can see that speaker's gone. Yeah, Debbie Mercer's disappeared.
Yeah, she's gone. Members of the public, can you please leave quietly, please? This is a public meeting, but I'd like you to be respectful. We have been very respectful tonight. Thank you.
So I think we can probably go straight to the you can ask. Just wait to see these two are leaving, but you can probably go straight to the vote on 10, I think, because them two.
Press recommendation.
I mean, I think just check first, because Councillor Mercer, is she going or is she staying?
Are you staying? You staying? Yeah, okay, thank you.
So check with Councillor Mercer and with Mr Buist if they would like to speak on the application, and otherwise go straight to the vote.
Right, we're going to item 10, members. I'm going to ask Councillor Mercer if she would like to speak on this one. And Mr Buist, is there anything else you would like to... Right, thank you. Members, we've this has all been debated with item 9, so we're going to go straight to the vote. So the recommendation is to accept this recommendation. Can I have members have a show? So can I have a seconder first, please, Councillor FD? And then can I please have a show of hands for approval of this recommendation? Please put your hands up until 7. Thank you. Against? Same. Abstentions? Thank you. Anyone want recorded on this one? The same. Thank you, members. So that's 4, 7 against 4, 1 abstention, and that's been approved, members. Thank you very much. We will now go back to items 6 and I think we're doing 6 and 7 together, like we have on.
Six,
No?
6, And then 7
Oh,
and
sorry,
8.
we're doing 6 on its own, and then we'll do 6 and 7
7
together.
and 8.
Sorry, 7 and 8 together. Okay, members. You can't hear this? Right, if members cannot, members of the public can't talk, why? Because we have got some people that need the hearing loop. So we need consideration for those. Thank you. That's including members of the committee. Item 6
Yes, I'm gonna, yeah.
is the Freight House Bradley Way. And again, I'll ask members that you've read the papers and the addendums. And it will be... Who's going to put to the report? All right. Oh, sorry, Claire Buck, please. Sorry, you're in yellow. I couldn't see you. Sorry.
That's okay. So, Chairman, this application is for the extension and part conversion of the Freight House to provide new office accommodation, Class EG, and continued community use, Class F2B, with associated parking and landscaping. As you can see from the location plan, the site is located on the south side of Bradley Way and West Street. It is accessed from West Street through a joint access with the Rochford train station car park, located here. To the south of the site is the railway line, and to the east is public open space.
Claire, please. Members of the public, can you please be quiet, because I have an indication other members of the public can't hear the presentation, and they are here to listen to this. Thank you. Sorry, Claire, please continue.
To the south of the site is the railway line, and to the east is some open space with the reservoir as well.
Oh, Claire, can you turn up a bit?
I don't think I can
Stanley can't hear
I don't
you.
think I can turn it up here, but I can move it.
Oh, that's better.
Hang on. Is that better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Might not be when I move. Might be better with this one. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the site consists of the former railway building, the Freight House, and surrounding car park with some existing soft landscaping to the east. The site is a locally listed building but not nationally listed. It is located within Rochford Conservation Area and Rochford Town Centre. Part of the site is within flood zones 2 and 3, but this is limited to the soft landscaped area towards the eastern boundary of the red line site, so along this section here. So this is the actual railway building itself, a surrounding car park here, soft landscaping here, and as I say, this is the flood zone 2 and 3 is located right across this edge here. The site has been identified as a critical drainage area. A very small part of the site is located within the green belt, but this is limited to the far southeastern corner, so we're looking right at the bottom here, down here in the soft landscape section. So moving on to Plan 3. The proposal is to extend the southern rear elevation of the Freight House. A glass link would attach the two buildings, so you can see the glass link approximately there, and this is the main extension to the south here. The proposal would also involve the erection of 3 new buildings comprising a visitor cycle store, a refuse store located here, and also a plant room located here. It would also include a pedestrian ramp on the reservoir side direct from Bradley Way, so that's located just here. The proposal would involve works to the existing building, including like-for-like repairs to the brickwork, roof tiles, windows and doors, and internal footings. The eastern arch of the building would be open to connect the glazed link to the existing building. So as you can see here, the areas highlighted red, what would be opened up on the southern elevation of the building to connect through to the glazed link, which would then link to the extension. Here we have elevations of the proposed extension. It would have a pitched roof with dual gable ends, and in the centre is the glazed link. So you can see here, this is the perspective from the reservoir and open space. You've got the glazed link here, and this is the extension section there. And this is the perspective from the car park. So you've got the existing building, glazed link, and then this is the extension here as well. And that's the plant building as well, which would just be to the south of the extension. The extension would feature large glazed windows to both the western and eastern side elevations. The external materials would include red brick with aluminium framed curtain walling and windows. Let's move on to Plan 6. As you can see from the ground floor plan, the proposed development will provide office space for Rochford District Council, including a formal council chamber. The space will be adaptable to allow for use by the local community through the flexible division of rooms to accommodate a range of activities by multiple groups. This shows the elevation and floor plans of the building to the southwestern corner, so that's located approximately here on the site. That includes a cycle, refuse and asset store. So as you can see here, this will be cycle parking, you've got a refuse store in the centre here, and then this will be an asset store, all within the same structure. And then finally, Plan 8. This would be the plant store building. So again, it looks a similar elevation design to the refuse store, and that would be located just to the south here. The key material planning considerations are the principle of development, impact on the conservation area and locally listed building, design and layout, sustainable design, landscaping, impact on residential amenity, access and highways, flooding, ecology, biodiversity and trees, contamination and air quality. Looking at the principle of development, the land south of the Freight House has been identified as an opportunity site in the Rochford Town Centre Area Action Plan. The proposed mixed community and office use is identified as a use that would be appropriate in principle in this part of the town centre. Looking at the impact on the conservation area and locally listed building, the application building is identified as positively contributing towards the conservation area. The Council's Historic Buildings Advisor raises concern with the proposal. However, the harm identified is considered to be less than substantial and at the lowest level. On balance, when considering the wider public benefits, including securing an optimum viable use of the building, it is considered that these would outweigh the less than substantial harm identified. Looking at design and layout, the positioning of the extension is considered a suitable location for the contemporary extension and maintains the locally listed building as the most prominent view from the street scenes of Westbury and Bradley Way. The proposed link between the existing building and extension provides a bridge between the new and old. The scale, siting and design of the ancillary buildings would be considered acceptable. The Council's urban design consultant does not object, subject to conditions. When looking at sustainable design, the restoration of the existing building would render a very good BREEAM rating, whilst the extension would achieve a BREEAM excellent rating, which is considered acceptable. The plans show an intention for photovoltaic panels to be used for the roof of the extension in accordance with policy. Moving on to landscaping, the scheme includes a number of landscaping provisions, including, among other things, the planting of 10 trees. It is considered that the proposed landscaping scheme would create a visually attractive scheme that helps to blend it with the surrounding landscape. Residential amenity, the sufficient distance between the application building and the nearest residential properties in West Street, combined with the boundary treatment of these properties, comprising a number of mature trees, would result in the development having a minimal impact upon these residential dwellings. On access and highways, the use of the West Street access is unlikely to be any more intensive. The quantum of parking available would exceed the maximum figure within the parking standards SPD. 2 cycle stores facilitating a total of 38 cycle storage spaces would be provided by the scheme in excess of the parking standards requirement. The quantity of powered two-wheeler and disabled bay provision is considered acceptable. The parking bay sizing as existing on site would remain unaltered, and 10 electric charging spaces are proposed to the northeastern section of the site. County Highways do not object, subject to conditions. Moving on to flooding, a small section of the red line boundary would be within flood zones 2 and 3, but all building works would be located within flood zone 1. A flood risk assessment has been submitted with the application. This identifies that the surveyed low points within the site around the existing Freight House building are at a high risk of surface water flooding. The surface water drainage scheme would include geocellular storage and a rainwater harvesting system. Rochford District Council would be responsible for the maintenance of the drainage system. The County Lead Local Flood Authority do not object to the surface water drainage scheme proposed. Anglian Water have confirmed that there is capacity to accommodate the increased foul drainage. Looking at ecology, biodiversity and trees, mitigation with regards to bats and hedgehogs has been recommended, controlled by planning condition, along with a recommendation that building works are carried out outside of bird breeding season. Ecological enhancements have also been put forward by the applicant. One tree in poor health is proposed for removal. Other trees would be protected during construction works. The council's arboriculturalist does not object to the scheme. Contamination. A phase 1 and phase 2 assessment have been undertaken, and as a result, no mitigation measures have been considered necessary, and it would be considered compliant with policy. And finally, on air quality, it is not considered that the increased usage of this site would be significant when taken in context with the existing parking area and building and neighbouring train station and car park. The site is not located within an air quality management area. Chairman, this application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in the report.
Thank you. We have one speaker. We have one public speaker on this, Mr. Peter Buist. And again, same format, 5 minutes, and I'll give you a minute warning.
Thank you, Chair. Members and officers, thank you. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of the applicant GB Partnerships Rochford in support of the proposals for the Freight House. Through its restoration and extension, the Freight House is to become a new civic and community hub representing both the history of Rochford District Council and its future. This new hub will serve the communities of Rochford and the surrounding district, delivering administrative, civic and operational services within a welcoming, accessible, sustainable and safe environment. The submitted proposals are compliant with all relevant policies from the adopted core strategy and development management plan, and as stated by the officer, the land to the south of the existing Freight House is identified as an opportunity site within the Rochford Town Centre Area Action Plan. The application proposals are the result of extensive pre-application engagement with the RDC officers and the wider public. The proposals comprise the restoration and internal reorganisation of the existing building, a new extension to the south, and landscaping and accessibility enhancements to the site. The Freight House will continue to provide versatile and flexible space for many community, public and private events. The application includes the modernisation of the 3 existing function rooms. A new flexible council chamber is created within the largest central hall. When not required, the chamber will be dismantled and stored to enable the large hall and the 2 other function rooms to be used for many other public and private events. The function rooms will be supported by modern kitchen and catering facilities, bars and serveries, and secure storage. Existing WCs are to be refurbished and relocated to suit anticipated occupancies and accommodate simultaneous functions. The function rooms will be enhanced to vastly improve the acoustics of the spaces. Each function space can be independently accessed so that events can be held at the same time without disturbing each other. The new extension is located to the south of the site, allowing the historic Freight House to remain visible from Bradley Way. The new extension will be 2 stories high, and whilst it is deliberately contemporary, it draws references from the form, composition and materiality of the existing Freight House. The new extension is proposed in red brick and modern high-performing glazing set within regular structural bays that continue the rhythm of the existing building. The new extension does step up in height from the Freight House. This is due to the change in ground level to the south of the existing building. The new extension will accommodate the council's administrative functions. Office spaces, meeting rooms and breakout areas are located across the ground and first floors and will be flexible, providing various types of working areas for individuals and groups. A wide circulation spine accommodates informal breakout spaces with views over the nearby reservoir parkland. A new lift will ensure the new extension is fully accessible to all staff, visitors and public. The glazed atrium separates the new extension from the existing Freight House building, clearly defining the new and old elements of the project. The atrium will be the new public entrance, providing a welcoming arrival and orientation space. Public car parking spaces are retained on site, including 10 electric vehicle charging spaces. The proposals also include secure storage for both staff and public bicycles. The application improves the immediate setting of the Freight House, which benefits accessibility and functionality. This is achieved through a new level access pathway that rises gradually from the pavement of Bradley Way to the north end of the Freight House. And new landscaping and trees to the perimeter of both the new and existing building softens the boundary between the buildings and the surrounding car park, as well as adding further biodiversity to the site. As the officer has noted, the new extension targets a BREEAM Excellent rating, incorporating a number of environmental attributes. This includes highly insulated walls, floors and roofs, The location and size of windows has been modelled to optimise daylight into the new accommodation whilst managing glare and solar gain. New materials will be selected demonstrating low embodied energy and carbon. The roof to the extension is proposed as 100% solar panels generating on-site electricity. Additionally, provision of staff showers and cycle storage will encourage sustainable travel to and from work. The refurbishment of the freight house is designed to target BREEAM Very Good. This is achieved through new mechanical ventilation to the function spaces, new lighting and electrical services, and upgrading the thermal envelope of the building with additional insulation. Both the existing and new buildings will be heated by electrical air source heat pumps with no reliance on fossil fuels. In summary, the project is an opportunity to create a high-quality, sustainable public facility for the communities of Rochford and the surrounding district. I'd like to thank members for considering this application and invite you to support your officer's recommendation to grant consent for this application. Thank you,
very
Chair.
much. We'll give priority to the ward members, and it'll be Councillor Mike Steptoe who has indicated that he would like to speak on this item. Yep. And Councillor Cripps. Yeah, I've got. Again, Councillor Steptoe, you'll have 5 minutes.
Chairman, could I ask for the original location plan to be put up on the screen, if possible, please? No, the other one that showed where the floodplain was the next one along, I think it was. That's the one, okay. And is it possible that you could zoom in the area just slightly north of the existing building against the road area there? If you can move it a little bit to the left. That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Chairman, I'd first of all like just to say and compliment officers and GB Partnership. I've been involved with this project right from its original conception, and I know the amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes to get to this stage. It has been many years and a considerable amount of work, and officers and GB Partnership have taken on an awful lot of questions and issues right the way through the whole process. However, there is one particular point that I am still quite concerned about, and that's the disabled access to the building. The existing access comes up through from Rayleigh, the actual entrance to Rayleigh Station, which comes up a slope into the car park, which is not suitable really for people in wheelchairs, etc. There is in the plans to put in a slope from the northern face of the building down towards that area there, which is, if members and public know where I mean, it's where the 5-bar gate to the existing park is. My concern is that it has to meet a certain requirement of a slope, but wheelchairs, pushchairs going down there does concern me because it is quite a long slope and it will build up a bit of speed. Secondly, just to the side of where the hotel is, I don't think it's quite on that drawing there, there is an access route through to Back Lane Car Park. And thirdly, there is a couple of roads that come in. There's West Street that comes in and joins Bradley Way, and there is a zebra crossing which is a bit further up the road. So my concern is that I don't feel that there's been sufficient mitigation where that slope comes out onto the road, about people then trying to cross the road, which is Bradley Way, first of all to go to Back Lane Car Park, secondly to go up into West Street. So I have a concern about that particular point, and perhaps would be interested to hear what officers' concerns on that. I would perhaps suggest something like railings or some guidance for members of the public when they're using that particular access, so they're directed along to where the zebra crossing is, rather than crossing that busy Bradley Way. That is my main concern, Chairman, and I'll leave it at that, if I may.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Cripps. Can you just wait until Councillor Steptoe moves away? Thank you. Again, Councillor Cripps, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, it's a very brief one. Matt, Harwood White and myself have established that the Rochford District Council Conservation Area Management Plan is about 7 years out of date. It currently shows the Freight House on Greenbelt, which was changed in 2014 as part of the local plan and the allocations when its status was changed. So I'm just pointing out that the project overall is targeting multiple conservation areas and have a policy that's at least 7 years out of date. So I would suggest it needs some sort of attention. That's it.
Thank you very much, Councillor
Thank you.
Cripps. Are there any other visiting members that would like to speak on this, please? No indication. I will then bring it back into committee, and Councillor Williams, as a the Ward Council, have you would like to speak? And I think the mic's on.
I can speak. Thank you. Yeah, it's actually Rochford Station, Councillor Scepter, not Rayleigh. You had a typo there. I also have concerns about the pedestrian access, especially for disabled people. I was under the impression, I think the term would, I don't know if it would be undulating, but a little like a Swiss mountain road. I thought it was going to go and have some switchback. Yeah, thank you. Because it is a very steep, I know the area very well, and it's very steep. And also the crossings across Bradley Way, I fully support what Councillor Steptoe says. It's a very dangerous road and it needs to be looked at, and I would like to see a condition of some kind that this is given consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Have we got any other member that would like to speak? Councillor Stanley. Again, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if we could put a condition in of the rainwater harvesting so that that can be used for to meet the needs of the toilets and also for our carbon neutrality by 2030. And also, can we look at putting a charging point in for disabled wheelchairs should they run out of charge? I know we've got
Stanley, can I stop you?
Sorry.
Have you read your papers?
Yeah.
It's on 6.19, 3.5, I've just missed it now. On 6.19, it says that rainwater, 3.57, rainwater will be used for WC and urinal flushing.
I missed it. I'm sorry. I missed it. Okay,
so we'll
thank you.
scrub that question. Thank you.
Sorry. Can we also put in something for charging disabled wheelchairs that I haven't seen?
So can you repeat that? Sorry. About the disabled wheelchairs?
Yeah, a charging point for disabled wheelchairs so that...
Disabled, not wheelchairs.
Sorry, not wheelchairs.
No.
No, wrong
Like
word.
mobility scooters.
Mobility scooters, yes. Thank you.
Right. I will let Councillor Eaves, can I just get the officers to answer? They want to answer each question, members' questions, and then go back for the next one. You'll be next.
Okay, thank you.
Officers.
So just to come back on the query about the charging point for disabled wheelchairs, that would not be a material planning matter that we could deal with as part of this application. By condition, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to deal with it in that way as part of this application.
Okay. Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a point of clarification, really. Councillor Cripps brought an important point to the committee. Can I just clarify what the actual situation is with regards to the land itself now? Then, if as Councillor Cripps says, it's 7 years out of date, what is the actual situation on the classification of the land that we're actually building on, please? Thank you.
It's currently unallocated. But within the Rayleigh Area Action Plan, it's identified as an opportunity site. Rochford Area Action Plan. It's because I uploaded both area action plans onto the policy documents before I came in, sorry. The Rochford Area Action Plan identifies it as an opportunity site for development.
So is it Greenbelt?
No, it's not Greenbelt. There's the tiny, tiny section of Greenbelt. I'll just repoint that out. So I'll go back to the location plan. There is a tiny section of Greenbelt just to this section here, which is just caught within the site area, but it's a soft landscaped area, just a tiny section here. It's not on where any of the built form is located, which is all in this area here.
Thank you.
Is there any other member wishing to speak? Councillor Smith, are you?
Just waiting for the answer on the clarity regarding the proposed specification for the ramp and whether that's compliant. And
So we've just, as you've probably seen, we've just been sort of looking into that, and from what we can see from the landscape plan that's been submitted, it appears that we have ramps with flatted areas going up to the actual building. That's what it's currently being shown. So we've got different material types for that, and the ramped access is shown. We've got a section through here too, and on top of that, it's obviously a building control matter that buildings have an element of have a disabled access requirement with them. So we feel that it's sufficient disabled access is proposed as part of this application.
Thank you. Members, we have a motion on the table, a recommendation for approval. Can I have... I'd like to move it, and can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Smith. Members, can I have a show of hands for approval, and please keep them up until... Sorry?
There's some amendments on the amendment on the addendum.
Yeah, we've got the recommendation is set out on paragraph 1.1 of the report on pages 1 to 6 through to 6.6, and there are some on...
No, that's 7 and 8. Nothing on 6. Beg your pardon.
Right. Go back to what I've just said. We've got a seconder for the motion to approve it. Can I have a show of hands, please, for approval? Thank you, members. You can lower your hands. For, against? Abstentions? Thank you, members. There's 4 is 9, against is 1, abstention is 3. That motion is carried. Thank you, members. Now, as before, we're going to do... I'll get the papers, thank you. 7 and 8 together, but we will be voting on these separately. Okay. Now, the officer, this is the agenda item for South Street, and the officer is, if I can find, Katie Rogers.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Chairman, this application is for the conversion and alteration of the council office buildings at 3 to 15 South Street to form 20 residential flats.
You can't hear. Perhaps you need not use your little one, use the microphone. Hear that?
Is that better? Is that on?
Better? All right, thank
Is that
you.
better?
Yep.
So, Chairman, this application is for the conversion and alteration of the council office buildings at 3 to 15 South Street to form 20 residential flats. So the location plan is on screen and the site is edged red. It's a bit hard to see, but I'll follow it with this light so you can see, and it includes the access point to Lever Lane here and then extends around here. So the main buildings are 3 to 15 South Street, which front the eastern side of the road. The site also includes the modern extensions of these buildings to the rear and the existing car park and the existing walled garden, which is in this area here. There are purpose-built residential flats to the eastern boundary, so here and here. And to the southern boundary, here is number 19, which was in council office use but has planning permission to convert to residential flats. And then the old house is tucked in the southern corner here. In addition to the northern boundary, the site immediately adjacent to number 1 South Street, which is a shop at ground floor and has residential use above. The site is within the Rochford Conservation Area, and all of the buildings fronting South Street within the site are Grade 2 listed buildings. So the plan on screen shows in red areas where demolition is proposed, and this is the ground floor plan. The proposal seeks to demolish some of the modern extensions to the rear, so in this area here, the rear of numbers 5 to 7. This would include the removal of the single-storey building currently used as the main council reception, so that's this bit here, and the single-storey links and extensions surrounding this. So now on screen is the proposed first floor demolition plan, which again in red shows proposed changes to the existing buildings, including the removal of some of the modern partitions. Sorry, it's not, these are not in the right order. This is the proposed demolition plan at first floor, and you'll see that it shows some of the sort of demolition internal works to remove some of these modern partitions shown in red. This is to facilitate the new internal layouts to create the residential flats. Changes to existing windows and doors are also proposed, with the proposal involving the replacement of some of the existing windows and doors to the rear. So here also shown in red, you can see dotted about are changes. So that's really mainly to the rear elevations of 3 to 15. The existing timber frame windows in the detached buildings, so these two detached buildings, well that's linked detached, but these two are to remain, and the windows in these existing would be replaced, and the existing timber framed windows replaced with aluminium framed windows. Some new doors and windows are also proposed to the rear elevations of 3 to 15. I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail. As detailed in the committee report, the proposed replacement windows and doors are all considered to be appropriate given the context of this site and the conservation area, and also in respect of preserving the historic value of the listed buildings. I'll take you to the proposed site layout. That's that one. Just make it. So as a result of the demolition to the rear of 5 to 7, so in this area of the site here, this area would be opened up, and there is hopefully you can see, I might just zoom in. So annotated with the letter B here, this is a proposed single-storey extension to the rear of number 7. In addition, this area that's now had the buildings removed would be providing additional car parking on site. A total of 20 car parking spaces will be provided, equating to 1 space per flat, which in this town centre location where residents would have good access to facilities and amenities on foot and good access to public transport options is considered acceptable. New hard and soft landscaping will be provided in areas around the new extension and between the car parking. Some new tree planting is also proposed, so there's an additional tree to be planted here, one here, and then there's also one further down in the existing wall garden. 2 detached outbuildings are also proposed, so one to this northeastern corner here, that would serve as a refuse store, and one to the northern boundary of the wall garden, and that would be a cycle store. I'll take you to the proposed first floor plan. So 2 residential flats would be provided in each of the detached modern buildings to be retained to the rear, one at ground floor and one at first floor in each building. And there are existing windows at first floor in both of these buildings, which will be used to serve proposed habitable rooms. A planning condition is recommended to require that some of these windows be fitted with obscure glass to protect the privacy of occupants of nearby flats, including Millview Court to the east, and the flat in the upper floors of number 1. Otherwise, it is considered that the residential use of the buildings would not give rise to harm to residential amenity. I'll just take you to some of the proposed elevations. There are quite a few submitted. I show this one first. So this plan shows the proposed front elevation of numbers 3 and 5 here. So this is the elevation that's fronting South Street. And limited works are proposed to the front elevation of the listed buildings of the whole frontage along South Street. That includes numbers 9, 11, 13 and 15. All windows and doors on this elevation will be retained, but repaired and repainted where needed. Other works proposed are detailed in the committee report, but include, for instance, the repointing of the coping to the parapet wall, just in this position here, and some of the repair to render on the front elevation. Part of the, I'll just zoom in. Okay, so this elevation here. So part of the rear elevation of number 7 is shown here. So that's the existing public access through to South Street. And this shows the part of the proposed single-storey rear extension, which would have a parapet roof. Above this, you'll see proposed a new window with a Juliet balcony detail. You'll see alongside this, although it's very small, but it's this point here. So a number of new vents are proposed, but these are contained to the rear rather than the main South Street elevation. I'll then show you the proposed rear elevation of number 7 in full, because this is where the extension is proposed to the rear. So we've just seen part of it, but this is the full extent of that rear elevation. This would feature new windows and doors at ground floor level, and these would all be timber framed. So in conclusion, works of the proposed listed building including the proposed demolition, extension, internal and external alterations, and these works require listed building consent. And the key consideration is whether the works would result in harm to the significance of the listed buildings. The Council's Specialist Historic Buildings Advisor at Essex County Council is satisfied that the proposed works would be appropriate. It is therefore recommended that the application for listed building consent at this site be approved, subject to recommended conditions. The proposed residential use of the existing offices would be an appropriate use in this town centre location. The 20 flats proposed will be provided with appropriate car parking and amenity space, and subject to the recommended conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement, the heads of terms of which are set out in the report. The proposal would satisfy relevant planning policy considerations, including relating to affordable housing, ecology, flood risk, wheelchair accessible dwellings and sustainable energy. It is therefore recommended, Chairman, that the application for planning permission for this site for the development also be approved, subject to the recommended conditions and Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you.
Very much, Tracy. Again, Mr. Buist, to speak, please. You know the format, I'm not going to tell you again.
So good evening again, Chair, members and officers. I'm now speaking on behalf of the applicant in support of the proposals for 3 to 15 South Street. The anticipated future relocation of the council services to the Freight House provides a valuable opportunity to undertake the redevelopment of 3 to 15 South Street, such that it restores the existing historic buildings and secures their future for through their sensitive conversion back into their original use as residential accommodation. The regeneration of the site will deliver high-quality market and affordable housing within the town centre community in Rochford. The application site is located within the boundary of the Rochford Area Action Plan, which requires previously developed sites within Rochford's existing boundaries to be efficiently used in order to safeguard the surrounding metropolitan greenbelt. The proposed development also accords with the policies of the adopted development plan and the NPPF. The application is brought to committee following substantial pre-application engagement with RDC and their advising conservation officers. Numbers 3 to 15 is effectively a continuous building form fronting onto South Street. It comprises 4 individually listed Grade 2 buildings. Adjacent but not within the site is the Grade 2 star listed 17 South Street. The site is within the Rochford Conservation Area. The proposals deliver 20 residential apartments, 13 of which are for market sale, 7 apartments being affordable. To the rear of the site, the proposals include the demolition of the single-storey infill extensions dating from the latter half of the 20th century. This opens up the rear of the site to provide additional vehicular parking, pedestrian walkways and semi-private terraces to the new ground floor apartments. Where the removal of the 20th century single-storey extensions exposes the rear of number 7 South Street, a modest single-storey extension has been proposed to reinstate this facade. The extension is proposed in red brick to match the existing buildings with traditional parapet wall and a biodiverse flat roof. The heritage benefits of the proposals include the restoration and repair to the existing historic facades, in particular to the elevations fronting South Street. Internally, the new apartments have been laid out to retain and, in some cases, reinstate historic room proportions. In addition, the historic party walls that would have separated the buildings when they were originally constructed as individual houses have been retained. Central staircases in their historic locations are also maintained. And so collectively, these design attributes ensure the future legibility of the historic building layout. Historic front doors fronting onto South Street will be reopened to create a renewed active frontage onto the street, and the existing carriage arch at number 9 South Street is retained to provide pedestrian access from South Street through the site. A detailed survey of the building has allowed us to identify the remaining historic fabric and detailing, with the proposals incorporating and retaining these. This is particularly concentrated towards the southern end of the site, within number 15 South Street, where historic doors, cornicing and joinery are to be restored. The walled garden to the rear of numbers 13, 15 and 17 South Street is retained, along with the established planting and mature trees, providing shared amenity for residents. Many of the ground floor apartments also have localised semi-private terraces. New secure and covered cycle storage is provided on the footprint of an existing outbuilding towards the northern end of the walled garden, and the proposals provide 20 car parking spaces located to the rear of the site and accessed via the existing driveway via Millview Court. 3 of these spaces are wheelchair accessible. 6 electric vehicle charging points are provided, with service runs installed to assist the installation of future additional charging points when needed. The proposals strike a careful balance between sensitive conservation of the historic buildings whilst creating residential dwellings that are environmentally sustainable and meet current and future needs of their inhabitants. The development proposes to improve the performance of the fabric of the existing buildings wherever possible. This includes installing new insulating lining to the internal face of existing external walls. Existing windows to the rear that are not historic are to be replaced with, modern double glazing. Historic windows are to be restored with secondary double glazing installed internally, improving both the thermal and acoustic insulation of the windows as well as air tightness, without detriment to the historic external appearance. Photovoltaic solar panels are proposed on the modern south-facing roof slopes to the rear. The new dwellings will be heated by internal air source heat pumps discreetly located within cupboards in each apartment. Again, there's no reliance on fossil fuels. So in summary, the application seeks to secure a viable future for the site through restoration and conversion of the historic buildings, whilst delivering 20 new environmentally sustainable dwellings within the heart of the community. Thank you, members, for considering this policy-compliant application, and I invite you to support your office's recommendation to grant planning consent for this application.
Thank you very much. We have one ward member, Councillor Steptoe, who has indicated that he wants to speak on items 7 and 8. Thank you, Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to address my comments that I made on the last item to this item as well, that having been involved with this since the original conception, I would like to commend how well the officers and planning department and GB partnerships have been working on this over the years, and it has been many years that has get to this particular stage. I have, however, 2 items that have been raised by residents that they've asked me to put to the members of the committee, and 1 item that I'd just like to ask members to clarify for me. That item is with regards to the old house, although it's not part of this planning application. The grounds at the back of the old house, and the old house is used for weddings, will that still remain available for people if they wish to take photographs for use by the old house? Will there still be access for the old house there? The items that have been raised by residents are mainly from the Millview Court, which is the big grey block in the middle of the picture there. Most members, I think, will be very aware of the limited access through to the offices from Millview Meadows. It comes down that little bit of road just in front of the Millview Court there, which has got a bit of a dog leg in it before we get into the car park. Two concerns that have been raised is one particularly from the demolition point of view, although I know it's not a material consideration, but residents are very concerned that is the only access for demolition vehicles. I believe that the access is actually owned by Sanctuary, and that we need to negotiate access through that for the demolition vehicles. It's not an adopted highway, so I'm not sure how strong that is going to be for the heavier vehicles coming in and out. Secondly, currently at the moment, that is the access for the car park for the offices. Now, that's very limited. That's only daytime. The offices close, I think the gates close at around about 7 o'clock when everybody's gone home. How is that going to be when they are become flats? That's going to be the only vehicle access of people coming in and out. How is that going to affect residents? And I would ask the committee to perhaps ask how that's going to be mitigated. Particularly as Millview Court is sheltered accommodation, and I have on a couple of occasions over the years when I've tried to come in there, there's been an ambulance there. And that can block the entrance there. So I have a concern, and I would ask members of the committee to perhaps consider that. Having said all of that, Chairman, I'm fully supportive of the application and very much like and hope that it will go forward. Thank you,
Thank you
Chairman.
very much, Councillor Steptoe. Any other visiting members would like to comment on this, please? No indication. I will now go on to the committee, and the other ward member here tonight is Councillor Williams. Would you like to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. Once again, Councillor Steptoe has stolen my thunder. The only vehicular access to this is via Millview Meadows and through the private road that runs to the north of Millview Court, and there is also pedestrian access to Millview Court, the only pedestrian access on that road. So I do have concerns regarding the construction traffic once again, and so I would like to see something put in for the mitigation of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Officers, would you like to comment on that? Yes?
Is that on? Yeah.
It is, yes.
There has been a construction management plan submitted, and there's a condition requiring it to be carried out in accordance with that. But I mean, ultimately, we're going to have to utilise that existing access for construction. So I don't think it would be a planning reason to refuse an application. You know, so it will just have to be managed as successfully as it can. You know, bearing in mind the sort of sensitive use of Millview Court adjacent, but we'd expect, you know, contractors to, you know, be considerate in their practices. But ultimately, we consider that this access is acceptable for construction, and it wouldn't be a consideration on which to refuse this application.
Councillor Weston?
Thank you, Jimmy. Just a quick question on the construction side. If there's any damage done by the construction, is there anything in the proposal to that they have to rectify any damage that they may cause if it's going through a private road, obviously? Thank you.
Again, it's not a matter for the planning application to consider or impose any. It wouldn't be appropriate to impose any conditions or the like in respect of a planning consent. It will be a private matter between parties.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley?
Chairman. I don't know if it's a planning matter, but with the refuge, where did you say all the refuge bins were to be put for collection? And can the refuge lorry or turn round and drive in and out, or is it just a reverse in all the way? Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yes. So the refuse store is proposed here, so in the northeast corner of the site. And my understanding is that existing waste is collected from the rear car parking area in any case. So it would be kind of no different to the existing situation, other than the fact that the waste being collected is residential waste, not commercial. I think my understanding is that the refuse truck does reverse down this route into the site, and that would be maintained, that would be continued.
And Councillor Stanley, again, on 7.73.84, refuse collection would be from Lever Lane as per the existing waste arrangements.
Thank you. The reason that I ask this is that there's 2 bins per flat, or is there only going to be 1 bin per flat?
No, that's in this report as well, Councillor
Is it?
Stanley. Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It is in KT, it is in the report.
Flatted schemes generally have communal waste refuse bins, so they share a number of bins, but the refuse store is sized appropriately for the 20 flats.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Foster, then Councillor Reeves. All right, Councillor Reeves, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Thank you, Chairman. Being as how this is in a fairly intense residential area, do we have any conditions limiting the hours of working?
No, we don't have a condition limiting hours of working.
Can we include that then, please?
Yeah. We don't, as a general rule, put planning conditions on restricting the hours of operation, but it would be, again, part of the sort of considerate contractors. We wouldn't expect them to work, unreasonable hours, but we haven't put forward a condition that would limit it specifically.
Can we be mindful of Millview Court though, please?
So our environmental health team would be, if the construction was too early in the morning or was carrying on at unsociable hours, it would be picked up by the environmental health team under a statutory noise nuisance. And I mean, there is guidance that's out there for developers and contractors under the considerate contractors guidance. It's, it's not usual practice for us to actually put conditions on. They actually become quite difficult to actually enforce.
Can I just come back on that, please, Chair?
Yes, of course you can.
I'm aware that this committee has actually passed conditions in the past limiting hours of working.
Yeah, and
in this particular case, I think it's particularly relevant, being as how you've got a lot of old and infirm people living in Millview Court. If you've got heavy vehicles going through there at 7 o'clock in the morning or on Saturday afternoon, which it doesn't matter if you're considered a contractor, it still happens. If you have a defined time that people are actually allowed to work there, I would suggest that would be a quite reasonable to expect that as being conditions in that particular area.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we impose conditions, they have to pass the 6 tests, and one of those tests is that it's actually reasonable. I mean, obviously, we would expect the contractors to actually not to actually sort of do any development work at unsociable times, and as I previously mentioned, the if it was that developers were actually starting work at unreasonable hours and causing a nuisance to neighbouring residents, then it would be picked up by environmental health.
I think the only thing
it's very difficult to actually impose a condition like this, and you are right, Councillor Reeves, we have imposed conditions like that before, and they've actually been very difficult to enforce. It raises an expectation for the residents, And I mean, I'm sure that you're aware of some of those applications where we've done that, and actually it's been very difficult to actually enforce.
Well, personally, I'd like to propose that we do actually include conditions. I do understand exactly what you're saying, but I think that my experience of the building industry is you can put those in as a part of the considerate contractor conditions, but you will find that if they don't have a defined time, then they will be able to negotiate those times wider. That is the practicality of what actually happens.
Yeah, we can put it on as an informative to actually as guidance for the contractor.
I'd like to see something on there, yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So we'll actually put that in as an
Can we
informative.
suggest times that would be relevant,
Yeah,
please?
normally it would be not before 7 o'clock in the morning.
And after?
And after 6 in the evening.
And weekends?
Weekends is normally Saturday mornings, 6 till 1, and then no Sunday.
6 till 1 or 7 till 1?
7 till 1. 7 till 1, and then no Sundays and no bank holidays.
Okay, that would be appreciated if we can put that on as a recommendation, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I go to Councillor Foster, I just want to go to Councillor Steptoe. If you look on 7.725 of the papers, 3.81, it does tell you about the gardens and the photography. Okay? Just want to clarify that. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. I hesitate to say great minds think alike, but Councillor Eaves has just covered one of my points. An observation and a question. The access road, I've noticed in going to the council offices, is narrowed by the hedgerow along that top edge, being overgrown and rarely, if ever, trimmed back. That's quite a significant amount of overhang. The question I have is the subject of pedestrian access to Millview Court was raised, and the problem of that being through that narrow road. Is there any possibility that that access to the court could be via the entrance at South Street through where the development leads? Just a question. Doesn't need to be answered now. It's a thought to put on.
They're discussing it. I'll come back to you, Councillor.
All right, thank you.
Are you decided? Sorry, I'm waiting for an answer. Sorry. Then I'm going to...
Awesome. Will be via Lever Lane and out through, and there is another footpath access down to the sort of South Street, Keys Lane, I think it's called, that's out this way. But the development site itself does not propose to provide pedestrian through route for other residents in the wider vicinity.
If I may, I'm just suggesting it may be considered.
Thank you. Members, before we start, we've had a meeting that's gone on for over 2 hours. We could take a short 10-minute comfort break if required, but I'd like to move a motion without notice according to Committee Procedures Rule 9N to extend this meeting beyond 2.5 hours for as long as is practical in order to complete the business. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. I don't think it will go on forever, for a long time. Members, do we want a 10-minute break, or shall we want to carry on? Yeah? Can we have I need you to vote on that. I know it takes a bit of time, but can I just have a vote? You're not voting, Councillor Williams? Right, you're right, thank you. Councillor Williams, are you for or against? Right, thank you. Okay, so you'll be leaving after 10 o'clock? Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify that. Members, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this, or I'll go to the recommendation? No? Right. We have a recommendation for approval, members. They're set out on paragraph 1.1 of the report on pages 7.1 through to 7.10 of the report with amended conditions 2, 10 and 29 as set out on pages 2 and 3 of the addendum. I'd like to move the motion for recommendation. Have I a seconder? Please. Oh, I've got a couple of you. Whoever. We've got 3 of you. There you go. Please take them. Thank you very much. Can I have a vote, members, for all in favour, please? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Item 10 has been, item 8 has been discussed, so we'll go straight to the recommendation. Unless Councillor Steptoe wants to speak on this. No other members? Oh, right, thank you. We'll go straight to the recommendation that is, we put a motion on that is for approval. Can I have a seconder, please? Daniel Effie, Councillor Effie. Thank you. All members, can I have a show of hands? All in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you, members. I will end the meeting at 9:56. Thank you, members, for a very good meeting. You have 7 upcoming meetings. Stop it. Seriously,